Alrighty, welcome back, traders. April is officially in the books. You know, kind of a unique month for me, at least in my opinion. I didn't think much of it for the first 2 to 3 weeks, even the fourth week per se, and I just thought it was just a standard month, like nothing really special, nothing really that insane, no massive sector besides just the continuous, PRs from companies about the coronavirus. But then the last week, it just, as you can see by the P&L, like it just came out of nowhere, right? And all these plays started showing up, and these really really ideal plays, and so ultimately that made my month a new personal best of 26,000, which is just mind boggling. If you would have told me, a year ago, or a year earlier, or a year past in 2019 or 2018 even, that I was going to make, this much money to start off 2020, I wouldn't have believed you for sure. This is just quite insane, and I just incredibly grateful for the market we've had. And so, like usual, we're going to go through each week all my best and worst trades, and yeah, so let's get started. Let's go to stocks trade here. Okay, so a lot of plays, even throughout all the months or all the weeks this month, have been from CYDY. Quite a few trades on this one, just because it is, a very liquid OTC, which is something we usually don't see. And I actually completely missed, believe this run. Uh, well, actually, this is the end of March, so I actually did talk about, I think, a little bit of the trades I took on these first two green days. But coming into the month on what looked like a first red day, but really ended up being green day, was this green candle right here on April 1st. And so I have the intraday here. And actually, no, so it just cut off because of the month. But essentially, or actually, was this it right here? I think this was it right here. You're right, it is it. So the red green mark, I believe, was like 260, way down here, right? And so we gap up, and we immediately start panicking right out the open. And so I'm trying to be aggressive, right? This thing's up from $1 over 2 to 3 days, right? And I want to be there for the first red day. So I start shorting into this panic. I then add a little bit more on the red green move, assuming like how most OTCs go. Once they start panicking, it's very easy. Not, I wouldn't say very easy, but it's pretty legitimate to tell when a bottom is coming in, and usually they panic at least 5-10%. So by shorting at the red green move here, I was pretty confident it was going to panic even more, and I could decide to downsize or decide to stick to a new risk level, whatever the case may have been. But this stock I quickly learned this stock was going to be a pain in the ass, because it held very quickly, didn't even go red a couple cents, and then just ripped back, right? And all of a sudden, next thing we know, we're breaking highs over 290, and we're touching three. And so, in this area, I had to cut it. And so, unfortunately, I started off April with this a negative $1,100 day, all from CYDY. It wasn't obviously the best feeling in the world. It kind of did suck, but it is what it is. At the same time, I have to take a step back and realize my account is big enough to easily withstand an $1,100 loss. I did go into today risking at least close to 1,000, so only a couple $100 over what I was willing to risk, and so I just had to accept that. Now, the next day though, it completely fell apart, right? So just a little bit of an odder, action in stock, where, it was total pain in the ass on what should have been the first red day, but the day after it just completely falls apart, right? And so I actually miss this complete short right here, because, after this day, after this, the day prior here, you know, I'm kind of like scarred. I'm like, no. Clearly a red move is not gonna make it go down. Now, of course, the second day it did, but it's okay. It wasn't a big deal, because I knew if this panicked enough, I wanted to dip buy. Now, see, if you zoom out here, I've talked about this on the Steady Trade Twist episodes, with Matt Monaco and Jack Kellogg. But when you see a panic like this that is so extreme, right? If you look out, like it's practically going straight down when we get to here, right? And so, if you've been around long enough, that doesn't last, right? As long as there's no offering news, or there's no like just drastic horrible news that's going to send it straight to zero, right? There's very likely, there will be a bounce. Not always, but very likely. So at that point, I saw this action coming in, and I was like, I want to dip buy. Now, this is a little bit tough, because what makes you think that this is the dip buy or this is the dip buy? Because both those made new lows, right? And part of why I made money on this trade was a little bit of, I wouldn't say luck, but just good timing, right? I just wasn't, maybe it was experience, maybe it's, again, like I'm saying, I need to see like this really like knife pull like this, But for whatever reason, I was not interested by these dips. Um, I do think it's a little bit of experience. I do think it's because I've seen so many of these play out. But ultimately, once we got here and we started, the volume is a little bit bigger than past candles. This is what got me interested, right? So I started along in here. I did get a little nervous, right? Because there is this little pullback. I did, for that 2 or 3 minutes, think this could make another low, right? I could get caught into one of these bounces. So I did downsize, but then ultimately I saw them bottoming out, making a new higher low, and so then I quickly added back. I'm like, okay, this is likely the bottom. We then start spiking. I think I sell all between the 230s and 240s right here, and I'm out. Made I think about $700 on that dip buy, and then now same thing as I said before, right? You see this knife dip straight down, but now all of a sudden you see this kind of like extreme rocket of a spike right back up, right? And so when you see these emotional swings, like straight down, straight up, it has to eventually find its equilibrium, right? There's got to be a point where this bouncing ball kind of peters out, right? And so because this was spiking so extremely high, so quick, I immediately realized, okay, this is now bouncing extremely high. This is about bouncing way overdone. You know, we should get a good short here, right? And so I start shorting. I believe that my first short was a little bit early here, around 250, around this action. It did end up going higher, but again, I wasn't going to cut it just because it went higher. I knew that this could happen because most bounces do happen like this, where they will attempt to keep making newer highs until they kind of round out. And that's exactly what happened here. I had my risk level much higher, around 3 or above, because that's where VWAP was. And so as it started to peter out more and more, I added size and then completely started lowering my risk levels, right? As the more it petered out and rounded out is when I started feeling comfortable, okay, adding size here and there, and then just reducing my risk level from there on. And so once we were backside, I believe I had one more add into either like this little green candle or this little bounce. And then I started selling or covering dips into this one. And I believe I was all out by the two, once it broke 230 here. Um, Normally, I probably would want to hold overnight, but knowing this stock, if you've been watching it, yeah, they've had a PR. They send out a PR almost every other day. I think during this period they sent out a PR every day for like 8 days straight. So I knew holding overnight was probably not a good idea. And of course, what do you know? If I held overnight, I would have given all of it back, and pretty much would have taken a loss or a break even. So that was a really smart move by me. Just avoiding overnight on that one. That was pretty much it for the first week. Second week was kind of what made this month different for me because, you know, the past few weeks I've usually always taken a trade every day. Maybe one day a week I don't take a trade. Uh, but I didn't take any trades Monday or Tuesday, and that was because it was just slow. I mean, maybe the market needed a break, which is, in hindsight is what was the case. But even these days were probably trades I didn't have to take. Right? They were just little things. This almost these 2 days of not taking trades, I finally collapsed and said, okay, let me just take a trade. And these two trades weren't ideal. I don't even remember them. They weren't anything special at all. And so ultimately the week ended, up 400 because just nothing happened. Like I think these are two trades right here. Just nothing spectacular happened. So when this month went through or this week went through, I immediately reminded myself of, okay, we've had our hot months of December, January, March, and March and February, and eventually like the summer months are going to come, right? Just the basic seasonality of trading, the late fall and into winter and early spring, the months are very hot, and then as we enter into May, June, July, and August, it gets very slow. That's usually how it goes. So not it's not like that every year, but that's generally the how each year goes. And so after heading into April like this, I'm thinking, okay, the market's finally slowing down. We're going to start seeing less and less plays, and we're ultimately going to slowly fade into summer trading. Uh, and that really wasn't the case, right? Coming in the second week, there was nothing again ideal, super ideal, but there were just a lot of plays that I could that were setups and that I saw as predictable moves to make money off of. And so it kind of shifted, right? It did not continue being slow. It continued to speed up with a lot of plays. So coming into week three, it was, again, nothing, it's very conflicting week because I did make, you know, a decent amount, right? Making 5 grand a week is generally my, I wouldn't say average, but it's becoming average, right? Like it's something still new, but it's happening, right? I'm making over 1,000 a day usually. And so to do that on this kind of a week where there wasn't anything massive kind of told me that as a trader, I'm becoming someone who can really take a lot of good singles and ultimately end up over $1,000 a day, which is, again, I'm not used to that at all. So one of the singles that week was Works. Works, this is red because it's now halted by the SEC. They put out a lot of fluffy, coronavirus news that really was not legitimate whatsoever. So they will likely be reopened a much lower. We'll see. But I only took one trade on this one, and it was an overextended gap down. I actually briefly talked about it on the steady trade twist episode that week, but I did make 500 on it. I want to go over it because it's pretty a good technical play. So this stock, obviously, Corona News came out. It was at $2.50. One day it PR'd. Next thing is up 6, and then it continues to run up to 14. So just a massive, massive runner. And so I'm looking to short it. And now we have a huge gap down, right? We open up. It closed at I believe 290.13 level. We now opened down at 9 or 10, so immediately a gap down of 20%. And in my experience, or if you know how I like to trade, overextended gap downs are not my favorite of a play because I just don't like shorting so low. Like normally I want to short at red green and cover when it's down 20%, not start my short when it's at 20%, right? So I struggle with that a lot. But anyway, I knew if it did spike, I wanted to get short. Now, even then, right, the red green level is at 13, let's say, and it only spiked to 10 and 11. Uh, this is something I've been working on and trying to get better at, which is I will take a small starter, risking that level, which is very far away, but again, the high odds of it breaking are low, and then once it tops out, I will add, right? Because ultimately, even though it is down 20% in the day, it's up from $2.50. So, there is always more downsides. You can never say that it can't go lower because it can. And so as a short seller, I have to recognize that and just play the price action, not be too predictive, but be reactive. And so I took a starter, I believe, at the 10 when it broke the new high day here, right? When it broke this 1030 level, I started shorting into 1040 right away. Just a very small starter though, right? I'm getting plenty of room to run. Now, if you see here, it runs to 11. Now, why did it do that? Look at these little wicks on over here, right? This top was 1150. This bottom was 1140, 1130, another 1120, and even pre-market after hours, it's 1085. So clearly there is this, it's not an exact level, but there is this level of this channel, right? There's clearly resistance in the low 11s. There's clearly now support when it gets over there in the mid 11s. But so for when we're spiking here and it tops out right at 11, that clearly told me it didn't have enough strength to get over that level, right? That channel, it's going to hold. And so I ultimately then started adding here and here. And I think I actually have charts. Let's look at this. Yeah, I do. So yeah, again, so you see this here. I had the first add on the front side. It tops out at 11. Once it bottoms out, I then just, add on the backside here and here. We pull under VWAP. I then cover into dips near the low. I didn't want to be greedy. I kind of, at first I thought it could go lower than, 820, but ultimately I realized, I'm just being greedy. Let's just cover in these dips and be done with it. And so that's what I did, and ultimately pulled out, 800 or $500. So that was that. More plays on that week were CYDWay. Again, if we go back here, I did talk about this on the twist episode as well. If you haven't listened to that yet, I do talk about a lot of my trades, so a lot of these are going to be kind of repeated. But like I said on the Steady Trade podcast, or a twist was that some stocks show their personality, right, and they repeat their daily patterns. Repeat. CYDWay is a great example of that, where it when it ran last time, it ran from 1 to 150, had 5 days of consolidation, and then dumped, right? Same thing here. It ran to 1 to 3. It had a few days of consolidation, dumped, but came back, more days of consolidation, and then it started to sell off in a similar manner that we had 3 red days here, we had 3 red days here. And so the one play I had was after this red day, right? If we gapped down and pulled, I wanted to be there for that. And that's exactly what happened. I immediately hit it out the open. It panicked. Let me actually, I think I have the intraday here. We can look that up. So yeah, so exactly. So we pulled, so this day right here is this day. It is April 14th. And so that because we closed at the lows, I said, if we're going to gap down again, I want to get short. And that's exactly what happened. gapping out, I immediately get short right out of the open, risking the 250 level here, and we panic right away, right? Like I said in my first trade of the month, where I wanted to see it panic right when it goes red, and it didn't. This is what I was talking about, right? This is what I usually like to see, and that's exactly what happened. And so I immediately started covering into this dip. I think I covered a little bit more into here, and I missed this downside, but it wasn't a problem for me because I made 1,200 bucks on a very predictable play. So even though I did lock in, over 5 grand this week, again, it was very just a lot of singles. There wasn't necessarily anything huge lessons besides these like 500 here, 1,000 there. Just very small winners, just shorting over extended stocks, nothing incredibly special. So going into week 4 here, we start to get a little hot. We start to see a few good extra plays, and so let's get into those. First one is going to be the DECN, right? This one was, oh my gosh, this is freaking just unbelievably awesome. So essentially, what the stock did was it was at 18 cents, and they put out a PR that they have a conference call coming on, the 23rd. And so it runs up in anticipation of that, right? We go from, 18 cents to over touch 40 cents on the day prior, and then we actually start running before the conference at 50 cents. Now, I actually did make money here on the long side. There was a key breakout level over 30. And so if you see here, you know, very key level where it broke the high of day over 29, consolidated a little bit, then burst through 30, and the volume's huge. And so I did feel comfortable, at least testing this breakout level, even though I'm not the best at them. And I ended up selling into this ramp here into 34, made like 500 bucks. For me, be going long, that was a huge win. I actually ended up going long again right out the open, right into this dip here. Like after 2 minutes of selling and it's not going down, I'm thinking, okay, they're still going to keep running it into this conference today. That's really huge, and it's not selling off, right? So immediately I get long. It works. I actually tried selling here, completely missed. And the next thing I know is it's now super weak, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, they're not going to run it into the conference. I need to get that hell out. I end up selling dead bottom for lost like 50 bucks. I literally lost just commissions, and then it ramps back. So that was quite frustrating. But at that point, I knew I needed to leave it alone. I needed to wait for the conference to come, and then I will react from there. Now, what is my mindset going into this conference? Ultimately, because it has run up in anticipation of this conference, I'm getting the vibe and the feeling, and from past experience, that it's only going up because of the conference. So once the conference hits, it's like it's already priced in, right? It's not a certainty like that. It could keep spiking if something on the conference said like amazingly good, but ultimately the odds are it doesn't go up, right? And if it doesn't go up and it's extremely overextended like this, and there's many people long, the odds of it going down are much higher. So that's what I was looking for. And ultimately, you had to be incredibly fast, right? I was not listening to the conference call. I didn't want to hear what they said to be biased. I ultimately wanted to just see what was the price action going to do, and could I react quick enough? And I kind of did, kind of didn't, right? I immediately saw this red candle, and I started shorting as quick as I possibly could. I only got half size that I wanted, so if I was any few seconds later, I would not have gotten filled. And my goal was to cover like under 30 or at 30 in the breakout level within a day or two, right? I thought really it was going to fade, maybe it was going to go sideways, and ultimately the next day was when I was going to cover. You know, Seeing at the action here, that is not what happened, right? We panic, from 45 cents down to 20 cents within 3 minutes. I was just completely blown away. I was like, what is going on right now? Like what was said now it's like I wanted to know what was said in the conference call, because something clearly just some long and money longs just dumped the crap out of their shares. Like they said, get me the hell out. And so by the time we were at the low 20s, I said, yeah, there's no way I'm not taking this and covering here. I started reading level 2. I did get a good cover, I believe at 22 cents, and then we bounce. Now, this is a great dip buy, right? This is the play that I would grow my account with when I first started becoming profitable. I should have been all over this. I should have been along a lot of shares and made a great profit alongside. But because I was so almost dumbfounded by the fact that this thing panicked, 50% in 2 minutes, and what was half of my size, I made like $1,500. I was like in shock. I was like, what just happened? Like, what just went on? So I just completely missed this long. But again, it's very similar to CYDY, right? When you see this extreme knife pull and extreme knife spike, right? again, there's the emotionality is still going on, and there's still going to be another good pull. So that's why I started shorting into this bounce. I think the red green move was like 70 or 30, it's not 70, 37. So it just tapped that level or just went over it, and then we pull, right? And something I've learned, I think you saw with CYDY and with this one, where the bounce short, it usually the pull doesn't go lower, right? It's never going to, even with WORX, if you're shorting the bounce, the it's almost a little bit too greedy to assume it's going to go lower. Some do go lower, right? You could end up making a bigger profit, but ultimately, being conservative and wanting to just nail the at least the meat of the move and not have to maybe risk giving profits back if it goes higher, taking profits into kind of the mid range between the low of the day and where it topped out at is usually the right move. And so that's what happened. I covered once it broke back under 30. I covered in like the 29s, and that was it. Right, I think ended up locking in 2,400 total on this ticker today, and now it is red because it is halted by the SEC for the same reason that Works is just fluffy coronavirus news that is not legitimate, and so the SEC is cracking down on those. They're not going to tolerate that in this market. So we keep going, and then so my first worst day of the week was this day, and nothing really special about it. I just ultimately started taking losses on INO on the front side here. This was a tougher ticker to play. Last time it ran, it was very easy, very smooth. You could have just waited for the first red day and it would have worked. This one, it did go red and back and forth a couple times, so it was more difficult to play. I took a couple $100 losses on the front side there. Same thing with GNMK. This ticker, if you're a beginning trader, I would completely avoid this ticker. Even being experienced, I should be avoiding it. They do have earnings on Monday, so it could, finally end their run. But clearly, it almost looks like there's nothing stopping this thing, right? Eventually, a red day is coming. Eventually, backside is coming. There's no doubt about that. But the action of how it's going to get there is probably going to be so unique that I don't know I'm going to play it, right? I've tried so many different areas to play it, where if it's gapping down short, if it makes new morning low and then re-breaks that low, I'll short. Um, whatever plan I've made, it's failed, right? And they keep going green, it keeps coming back. And so I've taken probably 2 or 3 losses on that one of them being on this day. So that's just that. And end up being 3,000, which is still great week. And something I want to make a note of, what this second week did to me was kind of shift my gears, where I thought I thought we were gonna slowly fade into summer trading, right? And so I kind of took a very defensive approach these weeks, where I probably could have pushed it a little more, right? I could have made a little more money on these single plays. I could have pulled out a little more profits, but I took very small risks, right? I think between, since the first day of April all the way to this day, I believe I didn't have a loss over $300, which is kind of surprising because normally I like to risk more and I like to at least 400, 500, or 600, and I usually let the play out to where I'm ultimately stopping out full size because I want to really give it time to work. But because we are entering summer, I almost took that approach into these weeks, and it almost kind of helped me more, where I took a defensive approach where I was still pulling out a lot of profits, but I was keeping more than losing it, right? Uh, and that's ultimately why I think these weeks ended up being so great, was not because I was making so much, but because I was losing so little, right? Uh, even these 2 red days, 170, like these are the only losses I believe I took these days, right? And so I did have a couple losses maybe in one of these other days, but all of the losses were under like 200, 300, right? Which is a huge win for me, right? To keep those losses that small and to be able to see plays not work in time and avoid a bigger loss is huge. Now that takes a lot of experience, right? That takes a lot of time and seeing how plays should work, and if they're not working, you get out earlier. But as a beginning trader, I usually always would stick to my risk. But lately, I've gotten better at, if I don't see a play work the way I want it to work, I usually get out earlier. So that was something I really did really well these few weeks. It did end this week. I did, like, between the INO and the GNMK, I lost, losses over 300. But it's not the end of the world. Clearly, I was still up plenty on the month. And so now we head into week 5. Week 5. So finally, INO does break, right? We do finally, fall back. I actually, or back, hit the backside. I did miss these 2 days, but the first red day here and the second day here, I actually did end up nailing. We'll go to the intraday here, get some water. let's have it load for me. Here we go. So again, I did talk about this on the Steady Trade Twist episodes as well, where, I did take a couple losses on this here, a couple wins and losses trying to, get the backside, but ultimately it really wasn't. Even here took a loss because it held red green, kept going and squeezing. And now this day is when I started getting interested because the range, the downside was much bigger, the selling volume was much bigger. And so I did get short into these pops here. I did ultimately end up covering here because I thought this action was going to be the same as it did prior, where, it would pull, but ultimately it kept bouncing. And I was like, if this bounces like this, right, I don't want to be in there, right? I do not want to give back my profits on this thing. This thing has already been such a pain in the ass on the way up. And so I did cover here, but then something I noticed was, unfortunately, this chart isn't showing VWAP, but this push right here was into VWAP and it quickly failed, right? And so that was one of the first signs I noticed where this is weaker than normal, right? This was already a good sign that it was weak, but because it was bouncing now, I thought, okay, will it continue its run? Will the grind keep coming? And the fact that it totally stuffed VWAP and then started to fade more here got me interested. It did kind of give me a sign that like this could fade late day, right? Because it did that here, right? It did this here where, this day it did close red, but seeing how it bounced like this, I thought it wasn't going to pass red. But if I was watching closely, I would have seen that it stuffed here, made a significant lower high here, and then pulled, right? And I kind of ignored that. I didn't make any money on that move. Uh, and so I wasn't going to make that mistake a second time. I immediately noticed that right here. And so I started taking starters into these little bounces. But again, I wasn't going to get aggressive until we went red, right? Because this could have easily held green and we could have ramped into the late day and I could have taken another loss. So I just had starters on. I wanted to see, were we going back red? And this move right here at, 1:20 p.m., we go back red. And so at that point, I'm thinking it's a very high odds now that we pull. We're going to have an official solid first red day. I added there. I actually didn't take any off into this pull, which I probably should have because this bounce did worry me just a little bit. But if you look again, the morning lows were 1430, 1440, and this bounce topped out around 1430. So again, now just like works, right? The newest support becomes resistance. So that kept me very comfortable. And the next thing you know, we pull super hard. Finally, the backside is in. I end up covering into, I believe, this dip or the last one here for about, I believe, 1,200? No, more than 1,200. 2,400. Yeah, sorry, almost double. And so that pretty much really solidified, this day of the play of the day. Really, I know it was a sweet, sweet mover. And so I ultimately covered overnight. I didn't want to hold overnight, and I was ready for a second red day. And I'm really glad I didn't because again, I said if this thing could gap up, it would be a huge gift, right? Normally, assuming on first red day, it's easy to assume that it'll gap down, but there's always that chance it can gap up. And if it gaps up, it's usually a gift for a short seller like me. And that's what happened. We gapped up and then immediately started shorting into this bounce and then into this bounce right here. We did unfortunately bounce a little bit higher, which would have been nice if I got an ad, but I didn't. But then again, we just start pulling, right? Right. Finally, longs are starting to reality starting to hit them that this is backside. And you could all see in the chart here how clean this of panic this is versus here, right? Much more choppier. But finally, once this backside is confirmed and longs are realizing this thing is going down, the next day it's pulling pretty easily. Uh, I did end up covering right around here because you see the new low was 1275 and it barely could break that. I think only went to 1260. And so with such a weak new low a day like that over the previous day's lows, and I was already up, over $1 a share at this point, I thought to myself, yeah, this isn't going to go lower. And that was right. That just ended up being the right thesis, and I was correct in that. So I haven't played it since then. Likely fades much lower. Maybe if we get a balance, I'll short it. But for now, this is a no play. So keep going here. I think I made more money on CYDY here. Actually, no, I actually had a loss on CYDY. Let's go back. Here we go. So again, this is another play like Decn where they had a conference call coming into it. Where was it here? Right here, this day. So, I did end up trying to play the breakout here over, I believe, 350. That quickly failed, so I took a loss there. Same thing with almost very similar to ECN, where I took a long and I took a loss. And I said, okay, screw it. I'm not going to trade it going into the conference unless it is short, unless I have a good thesis. And so this started panicking, right? The conference call was at 1 o'clock, and we actually start panicking beforehand. So I'm thinking, I'm naively thinking that this is gonna, you know, this is telling me it's gonna go down before the conference even starts, right? Which is not the right thinking at all. So I start shorting into this panic. I start shorting this bounce, and the conference starts. And now you notice when the conference starts, it pretty much doesn't have any pullback, and that was really frustrating. I ended up did covering it, over 350 here. Unfortunately, I did get squeezed a little bit for a little bit of slippage, uh, but it is what it is. I took about like an $800 loss. Um, I didn't break any rules per se. Maybe shorting this low was a little bit dumb, but ultimately, whatever they said in the conference call just made longs happy. I really don't have any other words to say. I really can't explain it, but some trades don't need answers. All you need to trust is your risk management, and I cut it. And so, losing $800, $900 on this is not the end of the world. And I actually ended up did shorting it to the next day and made like 600 back. So not the end of the world, just something to keep watch for the future. So I think that was it for CYDY on this month. But then we keep going into some of my favorite plays of the week, which was NMHY, NMHLY. I actually what got this on my radar was this moves right here. It went from 30 cents to almost $16, and then panicked back down to ones. And I missed this play. I didn't short this at all because the volume was lower, and I kind of was like, I've never seen a stock like this before in this kind of way, the way it moves. And so I was like, oh, whatever, I'm just gonna ignore it. Now, after seeing a dump like this, I'm like, oh crap, like this is working just like any other play. And so if it ran again, I was going to get interested. And so that's what happened here. If we go into the intraday, let's see here. It ran again, so back down. So it started at 30 cents, go over to $10, back down to 30 cents, and now we are ramping again over $1, right? So this is I'm getting very interested. Ideally, I was hoping it would go back to 2 or 3, like higher the better, right? But clearly on this day, it was weak. We slowly kept fading. And something that was very odd about this ticker was that the spread and the speed at which it spiked was very quick, right? If you took large size, you were almost certainly going to take slippage. Um, you know, it's very tough in that manner, but because the range was so extreme, you could take small size and still make a lot of money. And so that's what I did here. I did have a small short here, made some money, but then I tried to reshorting this bounce and then pretty much gave it all back on this slippage spiking up to here. So I said, nope, just wait for the first red move. That's going to be the most predictable and easy way play. And so that's what I did. I waited for, the 89 level to break because the red green level was 85. So I thought if it broke the low at 89, it was likely going to break red, and that's exactly what happened. We break it right here, I get short, and immediately it panics from the mid 80s down to the mid 50s. So literally, what 30%, like almost 40% in a matter of minutes. Very similar to ECN, but kind of a different play. There was no conference call, there was no bad news. It just fell apart, right? And so very similar here, where it panicked so quick. I again was kind of dumbfounded. I guess I haven't dealt with such awesome OTC panics in a while, to where I covered in the low 50s or the mid 50s, and then I missed this bounce. I missed it again because ultimately, I was scared though, because if it was a fake out, I was going to have a lot of slippage like I was here. But ultimately, I was still in shock that it panicked so well. And so I did miss the long, but I did reshort right here, covered into this pull, and ultimately ended the day on $1,400 on this ticker. So that was super cool. I think the biggest mistake though I made was not reshorting. Right, this was a perfect rebounce, like another bounce to get short. I could have faded all the way into the close and then even lower back down to the 30s, which would have been insane. But it's not the end of the world. I was content with this gain here, so missing this, isn't the worst thing. All right, and then another play was AMC. We all know AMC. AMC is a entertainment movie theater. I don't want to say service, but it's entertainment studio. They are likely going to go bankrupt. I can't say that for certain because I'm not a big financial guy, but just hearing word on the street, and if you look at their financials, like they are likely screwed. Um, but they ran from $3 up to $5, so I'm getting interested, regardless whether they are bankrupt or not. And so coming into pre-market, I saw them really breaking down, so I did take a small starter short. I don't like doing that, but at the same time, if the price action is weak, I have to take it. I have to trust it, right? I have to kind of go with my gut and go with my plan. And so I did short right into this new low day over under 520. We immediately panicked super hard, like way harder than I expected pre-market. So I cover in the 450s. And then we actually get a gift of a bounce right back. Again, it's kind of this common trend you see in these plays, like this emotionality, right? This straight down, straight up. And so I immediately reshorted. Like I was like, wow, this is a gift of a short. I'm going to reshort again. And then I wait to the open. We end up penning right back down to 450. I cover again there. We then spike right back up for a second time. So I'm like, holy crap, is this thing going to give me a third time to do the same thing? And it kind of did, but not really. Like I did reshort, but ultimately I just started shopping around here, so I did cover for a very small win to add on to that. But ultimately I did end up the sticker 1200. And I think the key lesson I want to take here is that the level of like fear that I had on this ticker was very low. And I don't mean that in a way of that I was being very aggressive or I was trying to like, you know, not ignore that I could have taken a loss because I had a risk level the entire time. But the level of confidence that I had in this play and like the I'm sure everyone has experienced this and I have too, where you hesitate to get into a play because you're not certain, right? And everyone's going to deal with that at some point in their career. But as you get more experience, as you get more comfortable with just accepting risk and accepting losses very quickly, that was a great example of in this trade where because it was almost like if it hit this price, I was shorting. If it hit this price, I would cover. And it just was back and forth, where I was almost in this tunnel vision and this like this pure focus where it didn't risk didn't matter to me, where I was fully comfortable taking losses if they happened, but because it was working so well, I just did not hesitate. I was like, oh, short cover. Like it was just a very like awesome euphoric kind of tunnel vision. I know it's very hard to explain. Maybe if you haven't experienced it, if you stick around long enough, you become a profitable trader, you'll know what I'm talking about. Um, but yeah, that happened on this play. That's very cool. I felt like I was reading it so well, and so that was pretty much it until we get to the very last day of the month, which was just absolutely insane with UAVS. I believe so. They're a drone company. I believe I don't really know what the news was, but again, when you're running from $1 up to five, I get pretty interested. And again, this is a very similar where they had a conference call coming into it. And so after this month, you've seen me something like Decn where they have a conference call and they completely just get clobbered. You also see something like CYDY where they have a conference call and I get clobbered as a short seller because they spiked. And so going to this, I was a little bit uncertain as to what would happen. Now, granted, this thing was by far the most extended out of the two, right? Going from $1 to five, it's up 500%. So the odds of it going down are great, are extremely high. And so I do have my trades here. We can look at them. It's better in detail here. So right in pre-market, I did take a loss. I did get faked out in this little panic, and I immediately covered, realizing I was just way too early. I was being dumb, and so that was like $300. I then tried shorting this lower high here as we had like finally a decent pull, and ultimately I did get I thought if it broke over four I was going to cut it, and I actually got faked out. It didn't break four. It pulled, but it held view up, and I would have ended up covering here anyway. So that was another $300. So ultimately at this point I'm down like $600-700. Now, as you see here, if we zoom out again with the extreme motionality, if you look right here, we're going straight up again, right? This is the opposite of a panic. We're going almost parabolic. And so at this point, I'm thinking, if a key level fails, I want to get short. And so that's what happened here. We couldn't hold five. I did take a very small short, and I immediately covered in the pull. Right, this is something that is in a very aggressive play because if you're aggressive on size and you're wrong, you're going to get squeezed. And so that's what I so because this is such an extreme risky play, I do take small size, but because when the pulls do happen, they are extreme. So I do end up making I think about half my loss back. So now I'm only down 300 on the play, and now we start kind of what you see here is backside. The conference is coming in, so I decide, you know what, I think I have a good after nailing this play. I feel pretty confident I can read it well and kind of judge how the action is going to come out into the conference. So I do start taking a small couple starters here. I actually start adding more size here, and then we start spiking. We spark right into view up, which again in hindsight was a great ad, but I'm thinking the CYD way scenario, right? I'm thinking, oh crap, like here we go, and so I downsize. but then we immediately pull back. And so when we do that, I realized, crap, that was the ad, right? That wasn't the cover. That was time to add. And so I re-added my shares, and all of a sudden, boom, right? Whatever was said in the conference, which after the fact I actually heard someone in the chat room was listening, and they said in the conference call that the company said they sell their drones from their pickup truck. Just let me repeat that again. They sell their drones from their pickup truck. Okay, so at that point, I was like, "Holy crap! This company is going to crash and burn," um, and that's why you see this short here, right? Normally, in more times than not, this is a terrible ad. This is way too much in a weakness. But at this point, I'm thinking, "Holy crap! This thing is going to die. This thing is going to halt down." And so I just get short. I just add, and this was only a third of my size, right? It wasn't like all my size was here or that majority of my size here. It was just one third. I added a third more, and we halt down. Now, volatility halts only last 5 minutes, or should only last 5 minutes. And this one didn't. This one went over 30 minutes. And so everyone was wondering, like, what the hell's going on, right? And ultimately, what the case is that when a volatility halt lasts this long, the market makers can't find enough buyers, right? And I don't know the whole science of it. I don't know how the market makers do their thing, right? It's a whole other career job that market makers want to do, but you know when it's halting that long, it's like they're trying to find a market, right? They're trying to find where they open this up that is safe and that has enough liquidity for everyone to get out and exchange shares. And so ultimately, it opened down from 3 to 120. So like over 50% down. This is like this is what offerings look like, right? Offerings look like this, where your offering gets hit, it halts down and it opens down where the offering price is. But there was no offering, right? This was just a volatility halt, which is absolutely insane. Like just when you think you haven't seen everything, you're wrong. Like this is, I've never seen this before where it gapped down so hard on a volatility halt. I thought at best it would get below 250. So the fact that we opened it under 150, I was like, yeah, get me the hell out. Like this is going to be a huge gain. I immediately cover, and then I'm waiting for the bounce. Right. I actually thought the bounce could get to like red green. I was hoping it would go to like 250. If it the higher the better. Right. If it could have gone back to 3, like that would have been amazing. But extremely unlikely for that to happen. Um, after a few minutes, I realized it was petering out here again, like COA day, it was rounding out, like it wasn't going to go any higher. So I started getting short. We pulled back. I held this bounce. We pulled back again, and again, I was not going to assume that it was going to break new low a day. I was not going to be that greedy. I just assumed it was going to at least make it like halfway point, right? Make it at least like halfway down. And so once we got to the 130s, I did cover there, ultimately ending that day up, 6,700 on that ticker, right? And so after AMC and that, ended up closing the day at 8,500 to make my new best week of 15,000, and then closing out the month at 26,000. So just insane month. I'm just incredibly grateful for it. We'll see how this goes into May, but yeah, that's pretty much it. I do want to make a quick little note. I did get a couple questions this week or this month. Just having a good month, I have gotten obviously attention on Twitter. People reach out to me, ask questions, and I've gotten a common theme of a question of like, how did you stay so motivated in the beginning, right? How did you get through all the losses and study so many hours a day? What kept you motivated is the kind of the gist of the question that I've gotten multiple times. And the common answer I give is that like I had no plan B, right? Like yes, I was going to college, but I had zero intentions of actually getting a real 9 to 5 job with my degree. And so once I found trading, it was either this or nothing, right? I had no backup plan, right? This is what was going to work for me. This is what I wanted to do. This is what I knew was going to make me fulfilled and happy if I can do it. And so that was it. But because I got the question so often, I started thinking deeper about the question, right? Like, was that really it, right? Was that the only reason why? And no, it's not. Um, so there's an unspoken contract. I don't want to say contract. It sounds like I'm in jail or something, or some lucrative business deal. But an unspoken agreement with my parents that you know everything they have supplied and done for me, I am going to continue to do for my children and more. And so some people could assume. Well, I don't even assume. Like as a child, I was given more than probably the average, right? And I'm not gonna deny that, right? My parents, they bought my first car, right? They paid for my college, right? I have not missed a meal. I've had it close, right? So you know, I've very gratefully grown up very supported by my family and by my parents. And so, you know, I think it's very easy to assume that someone like in my position could be very spoiled, which is certainly the case. There's plenty of kids that have been given what I've been given and been far more spoiled. But I think the reason why I recognize how good of a position I've have and not to take any of it for granted is because my parents have always instilled in me that you should be doing better than we are, right? We have supported you so well for you to stay where you are or even go lower in life, or be in a worse situation than when you left the house or when we stopped, raising you, um, is a huge mistake, right? And so ultimately, I think what motivates me a lot is to do everything for my kids that my parents did to me, right? So for my kids who are not even born yet, for my family who I don't even have yet, uh, I'm incredibly motivated to give them what my parents gave me. Um, Kind of a very deep futuristic thought of like 10, 20 years in the future when I have a family, but it motivates it motivates me extremely, like a lot. Um, Also just not even my future family, but my current family, right? Like with my parents being raising me so well and giving me so much, like I've promised them that I want to take them on a trip to Italy, like all expenses paid. Like when we go, they're not going to pay a damn dime. I'm going to pay for everything. Um, when that's going to happen, that there's no set date for that, but that's something I've promised them. Another thing is my father and I, we've gone to the San Diego State basketball games for the last 10 years as season ticket holders. And, one day I said, like, Dad, we're gonna own courtside seats. um, and he looks at me and he just kind of laughs. He's like, whatever, Kyle, you didn't take me seriously, but I'm serious. Like whenever I decide that we can afford it and I make enough money from trading, like I will absolutely, me and him, we're going to own courtside seats. So that's a promise I made to him as well. So just all these things where it's like, they're not about me, it's about other people. And so I think, if you're doing something for yourself, that's great, and that can keep you motivated for a very long time. But I think ultimately that can wear out and that can die down. And so when you're doing something for somebody else, whether it's your family, friends, um, I think you're so much more motivated, and I think you have all the better edge. And I think if you have both, where you're passionate for something like I am for trading, and you also have an extreme motivation to then want to do it for someone else or to support something else in the future, like my family currently and the future one I'm going to have, I think that makes you quite unstoppable. So, so yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. We'll see how busy May gets, and I'll see you guys next time. Later.